You're listening to The Inner Strength Show. If you want to step into your greatness, you've come to the right place. Here is your host, the human strength expert, Kyle Newell.
What's up, everybody? It's Kyle back at you again from Unlocking Your Inner Strength and UnlockingYourInnerStrength.com. Thank you for all the support you've been giving me, by the way, as well. And thanks for spreading the word about this podcast. So if you like it, please remember, and I'll remind you at the end, to subscribe to it and rate it. Give it a good review on iTunes, or just give it an honest review. If there's something I can improve, please let me know, because I want to make this the best and most useful podcast that I can for you. So what we're going to do today, people have been asking me about book recommendations. People are always asking me about book recommendations. I know I'm an avid reader, voracious, I would say. I have over 700 books in my library. I read every chance I get, and I will be getting up a list on the site of recommended books. But I thought it would be cool to pick out two of my favorite books today and just kind of flip through them. I marked some of the pages. I mean, they're underlined, they're dog-eared, they're really worn out. But I marked some pages for this specifically. And I was just going to pull things out that were relevant to me and important to me, and just kind of talk on them for a little bit. And if you like the books, hopefully you'll pick them up and scoop them up. One of them, which we'll go over second, Your Truth is Calling. I do not believe he has an actual hard copy print anymore. And before we get into the nitty gritty, there's something about, to me, having a book, like an actual physical book in your hand and underlining it and making notes in it. I know it gets hardwired into your nervous system more that way than just reading on an iPad. But reading on a screen or an iPad is better than not reading at all. Okay? And another option, too, if you say you don't have time to read, utilize the time that you're in the car. We kind of talked about some time management stuff a couple weeks ago. Utilize the time that you're driving around or walking around to listen to audiobooks and audio tracks. Great way to leverage your learning. All right, so here we go. The first book. This is, to me, a classic, and a lot of people get turned off by it just because of who's a co-author in this, or kind of the subject of the book, and that's 50 Cent, a.k.a. Curtis Jackson. This book is called The 50th Law. I actually heard about this book while I was still teaching, and I was listening to Howard Stern one day on the way to school, and he was interviewing 50 Cent, and I'm a big 50 fan. I like his music. And, I like his hustler's mindset and attitude. So I picked up this book. I'd never heard of Robert Greene, but since hearing about it, I've gotten all of his books, because he's really what makes this book tick when you combine him with 50's story. But the 50th Law is all about being fearless. It's about stepping into every situation, realizing fear for what it is. And as I've talked about before with Mind Map, fear is often just an illusion. It's not real. It's not something that's going to take you down, but the brain perceives it as real. Fear is the oldest emotion. It's there to keep you paralyzed and keep you frozen and keep you from stepping forward, because the brain, remember, is hardwired for the negative, and everything the brain receives and perceives and kind of comes up with is all built around survival. So this book addresses that head on. So the first thing I want to talk about in the 50th Law, on page 5, they say, an animal that cannot let go of its fears once the threat is gone will find it hard to eat and sleep. So think about when you're stressed out, and think about when you're overly sympathetic in that sympathetic nervous system, when you're in fight, flight, or freeze mode, and maybe you just went through a relationship breakup. Maybe you just got fired. Maybe you were scared of a confrontation that was looming, or something. Maybe you had to fire somebody at work, or you thought you were going to get fired. The other physical attributes of the body, the other systems literally begin to shut down, because when we're in fear and we're overly sympathetic, blood is put out to the limbs to get us ready for fight or flight, and adrenaline skyrockets and cortisol skyrockets. All these stress hormones go up, and they will affect the other hormones. So, great book on that, by the way, is, we won't go over today, Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. Okay, and basically the quick premise of it is, if a zebra is getting chased by a lion or a predator, it either gets away and it goes back to baseline, goes back to being parasympathetic, or it gets captured, gets taken down, gets killed, ripped to shreds, and it's over with. It doesn't stay chronically stressed like we do as human beings. And a lot of that chronic stress is fear, and fear that's not based in anything real. So next thing I want to talk about, and again, these are just right from the book. I'm reading right from the book and giving my commentary on it. He decided to cut his ties to the game and dive into the music racket without any connections or a safety net. Because he had no plan B, because it was either succeed at music or go under, he operated with a frantic, bold energy that got him noticed in the rap world. So that's talking about 50 Cent. And that reminded me of when I stopped teaching, when I resigned from teaching. I had a great job. I had a cushy job. I love the people there. I love the environment. But I always knew that if I stayed there, I would never know what I was actually capable of in terms of being an entrepreneur and living my dream life and having the freedom I wanted to. I always knew, okay, I'll be making so much money teaching. It's okay if stuff doesn't work out over here because I have that to fall back on. And I was already driven before that, but once I stopped, it was like a frantic energy, and it was an urgency that kind of reinvigorated me and made me feel much more alive. So if you're thinking about, and that's basically what we're doing here, Unlocking Your Inner Strength, is my goal and aim is to help people and help you figure out how to get to your greatest life and to step into your greatness and step into that dream life. But you have to have a timeline of when, or just know in your head that you're going to have to cut those ties and you're going to have no plan B eventually if you want to make it. Okay? Plan B is easy to fall back on, so it's not the best thing to have. So the next thing, so I'm flipping through my book here. The greatest danger that we face is the mind going soft. And this happens to everybody. I noticed it happening to me this past summer and the bulk of last year, to be honest with you. I was losing my drive. We had Braxton. My mind was just starting to drift, and I was getting soft, and I didn't have that killer mentality and that competitive mentality that has done me so well in my life. And don't mistake that killer mentality, competitive mentality, for meaning that you have to be a dickhead or you have to be mean and you have to be arrogant and rude. You can turn it on and you can turn it off. And I've found it again. And I can tell you the difference is night and day when you have a soft mind or you have a mind of a warrior and a champion. But as soon as you realize you're going soft, and basically that's getting into a comfort zone, and that is when you have the golden handcuffs and you just become complacent. Complacency is when the mind is going soft. That's the greatest danger, and that's what you always have to be on a lookout for. We're always looking to see where the next threat or the next danger comes from, but most of the time it's in between our two ears, and it's the greatest battle that we're going to face is the one that goes on internally. It's not some external competitor or enemy or predator. It's right between our two ears. So this one I wrote a mind map next to it because it's funny, as I keep learning about the mind and keep studying mind map and applying it, I see the stuff everywhere. On page 36, it talks about having clarity. And having clarity, you will feel more connected to your environment like a spider on its web. We need clarity to do anything effectively in life, okay? Lack of clarity puts us into that fear mode and that threat mode because we don't know what the next step is. And the brain is a pattern recognition machine for prediction and response. So clarity in your conversations and your relationships and where you're going and what's next and what you're doing with your workout and what you're eating, we need it. It's essential, okay? And environments can either make or break us. They're very, very threatening or very, very comforting to the brain. And that all comes down to having clarity. So think about how you can apply that in your life. Next thing, page 41. And I'm not going to go through the whole book, guys. So don't, I think this is going to be like 5 hours. I picked out, stuff from the first, 70 or 80 pages, and then I'll get on to the next book. But just to kind of whet your appetite and, maybe you'll go pick up this book. Maybe you won't. Whatever, though. I want to expose your mind to some new ways of thinking. People like to look at the surfaces, get all emotional, and react, doing things that make them feel better in the short term, but do nothing for them in the long term. Again, remember the way the brain is wired from the mind map episode. If you haven't listened to that, go back and listen to it. And I'll be doing much, much more on that stuff. We have the reptile brain, the mammal brain, and the human brain, the prefrontal cortex. The mammalian brain, the midbrain, is emotional. That's where we get upset or we get euphoric. It's located mainly in that part of the brain. And logic and reason and forward thought and goal setting, that's all in the prefrontal cortex in the human part of your brain. So when people get emotional and react, a lot of times it stops there. They don't take some time to calm down, take a deep breath, and formulate a plan. A plan would be in the human part of your brain. So it's, this is kind of relevant with the election coming up. People are getting so worked up, no matter what side they're on, that they just want to yell at each other, and they're fighting on Facebook and all this stuff. And it's formulate a plan. Say something intelligent. Don't just get in a heated debate. And realize too that when emotion is high, when I'm doing mind map sessions and somebody starts getting very emotional or they start crying, logic goes out the window. So you'll notice that when you see people that just get overly emotional, usually nothing intelligent is going to come out of their mouth. And last one from this book, then we'll get on to the second book. Events in life are not negative or positive. They are completely neutral. The universe does not care about your fate. It is indifferent to the violence that may hit you or to death itself. Things merely happen to you. It is your mind that chooses to interpret them as negative or positive. And that kind of goes to determining what view on life are you going to have. Are you going to be an optimist or a pessimist? And it's completely natural and normal and commonplace to be a pessimist. That's how the brain is wired. But it's going to be up to you to determine how you perceive every situation. And you can't control everything that happens to you, but you can always control your attitude and where you're going with that and how you change your life because of certain circumstances that have happened to you. So all events are neutral, okay? And if you need some kind of simple little thing to do to put it in perspective, when something that you think is bad happens to you, just ask yourself this. What is great about this problem? What's great about this problem? And your brain will come up with an answer. Ask yourself that before bed. Ask yourself that when you have time to contemplate, because the brain is always going to come up with an answer, and there's guarantee you that there's something great about the problem that you're facing right now, or the problems that you're thinking are coming your way. They're not so bad. All right. So the next book is by one of the first coach that I ever had myself personally, in terms of hiring somebody to coach me. A lot of my training methodology and philosophy came from this guy. And a lot of the spirituality aspect I really connected with Scott on. His name is Scott Abel. This is Your Truth is Calling, Connecting the Dots to Self-Awareness. This is one of the best self-awareness books and self-help books that I've ever read. And it's a shame that more people don't know about it. It is fairly hard to get now. I actually have a physical copy here in my hand. It's one of my prized possessions. Just an awesome book, and we'll get to it, as far as going into it. I do think, and I'll put it in the PDF that will come along with this podcast episode, that you can get this in ebook version. So keep that in mind. So in the preface, There is more to gathering wisdom than gathering knowledge and accumulating years. Paul Eldridge put it this way: to have lived long does not necessarily imply the gathering of much wisdom and experience. A man who has pedaled 25,000 miles on a stationary bike has not circled the globe. He has only garnered weariness. So many people, and I used to see this when I was teaching a lot, they've taught for 40 years, okay, but they've really only taught 1 year 40 times. They haven't grown. They haven't gained wisdom. And so many people want to play that card, oh, I've been here longer, because I've been doing it longer. Well, no, that doesn't make sense. It's about moving forward and growing and taking what's useful and discarding the rest. So you see it in all professions, I'm sure, but it's an entitlement way of thinking right there. Next thing, Wayne Dyer. We're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are, in fact, spiritual beings having a human experience. So Scott quotes Wayne Dyer a lot throughout the book. Wayne Dyer, who passed a few years ago, he was kind of up there with me in my mind, like Deepak Chopra. Those were two of the first guys that I read as far as spirituality and self-development. But we're spiritual beings having a human experience. And I don't care what your beliefs are, there is a spiritual side to us as humans. I'm not talking anything about religion with this. I'm talking about a spiritual side. You need to find where you connect. What environments make you feel connected? What environments make you get deeper into that brain? And something that I have actually got tattooed on my wrist now, right where I can see it, is the quote, "This too shall pass." So often people want to use that in times of turmoil and when things are bad, and that's great. But another great time to use that is you always got to look at things and look at them in a different way. Ask yourself that when things are going great and when you're really enjoying a moment or experience that you're in. Just ask yourself, or remind yourself, I shouldn't say ask yourself, that this too shall pass. It's going to make you be present. And that's the scope of all religions, really, is to how do we bring mindfulness and love and presence to that specific moment. So I know it to be true that unless you work on your mind and your spirit, you're going to have an unfulfilled life. You might have a $1 million body and a 10-cent spirit or brain. What is that going to get you? What kind of life experience is that going to get you? So just something to keep in mind. Another mind map principle here he talks about in part 1, section 1. Our minds are wired to process emotional reaction before intellectualization. Hard word for me to say. But the mind is wired to process emotions before rationalization and logic. Again, it goes with the triune brain theory, okay? Reaction is the deep part of the brain, the lizard brain, reptile brain, then emotion, and then the intellectual part. So it's important, I think, that you know how your mind works, because you could always catch yourself. I caught myself just a little while ago. I was frustrated with a few things today, and take a step back, don't get emotional, you regather, you regroup, and you'll come back to fight another day. So moving on to page 20 here. Success is always the result of dedication, persistence, and perseverance. Success is always the result of dedication, persistence, and perseverance. And you don't have to be the most talented. You don't have to be the smartest. You don't have to have the best resources. When I started Newell Strength, I had nothing. It was just a passion. And it was persistence. And I used to have, and I think I still might, I was looking to see if I had this thing I had since I was in high school. It always sat right there in my mantle in my bedroom. It was something to the degree of the difference between a successful person and an unsuccessful person is not a lack of strength, not a lack of knowledge, but rather a lack of will. And that's something I've always prided myself on, is that I'm just going to be persistent until I get to where I want to be. And don't worry about who's doing this, who's doing that. Just persistent, show up every day, keep grinding, and there's got to be some kind of passion, because it's not that do what you love and the money will follow, that whole thing. It's without passion, you're not going to be able to stay in it for the long term. Endurance won't be there. Enthusiasm is easy to have. It's endurance that most people usually lack. So enthusiasm, the next, bright, shiny object, the next great thing that comes along, that's cool. But endurance, you got to be able to stick to it. And you can't stick with something if you're not truly passionate about it. Here's a great one. Page 25. Adapt the empowering position that whatever others think of you is none of your business. That was a Wayne Dyer quote. And that is, to me, very powerful because so many people get caught up in what others think of them, and it doesn't matter. It's not your business what somebody else thinks of you. Okay? So remember what I had mentioned in I think I mentioned a few episodes ago, was that 25% of the people in your life are always going to love you no matter what you do. 25% of the people are going to dislike you no matter what you do. 25% of the people are going to be kind of indifferent, but maybe leaning towards disliking you, and they'll grow to like you. And 25% of the people will like you and eventually grow to dislike you, and you're not going to change those numbers. So don't worry about what other people think of you, okay? It's just wasted energy when you spend a lot of time trying to figure out what somebody else thinks of you and worry about impressing them and all that stuff. So last thing here from this book, and then we'll wrap it up. If the chase is wearing out your health, stop. If the chase is wreaking havoc on your relationships, stop. If the chase is keeping you from enjoying life, stop. Another mind map principle. The purpose of any goal is to bring you to happiness. So if anything on the way to that goal is making you unhappy chronically or acutely, you're on the wrong path. That's your compass. That's your signal to determine, okay, am I on the right path or the wrong path? So that's it. I mean, those are two of my go-to books: Your Truth is Calling, Connecting the Dots to Self-Awareness by Scott Abel, and The 50th Law by Robert Greene and 50 Cent. Awesome books. I'm going to do a little recap worksheet, PDF, and if you're not on the email list for Unlocking Your Inner Strength, you can get that by going to unlockingyourinnerstrength.com/books. Okay, and you'll be able to enter your email there, and you'll get a PDF, and I've been doing that for every episode the past few, and I'm going to continue doing that, and I've got some cool ideas coming up. But again, you can go to unlockingyourinnerstrength.com/books, and I'll recap some of these two books, and I'll give links to where you can get them as well. All right, so thanks so much for listening. Keep spreading the word. I really appreciate it. Please take 2 minutes out of your day to leave a review and or leave a negative review, whatever, but something that's going to be constructive and help me make this better. Peace, boys and girls. I'll be back next week.
You've been listening to The Inner Strength Show. If you enjoyed the show, remember to subscribe, rate, and review us in iTunes.